You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing, beautiful mamas. I'm talking to you mamas today. Those of you who are wondering and asking and emailing me, what do I tell these kids? What do these kids need to know about my story, about the divorce, about their father? Like, what do I tell them? And I just want to acknowledge all of the heartfelt emails and messages around this topic. I get it. Oh my gosh, my mama heart is with you today as I share with you 4 things to consider as you ask yourself this question. First of all, the answer to this question really is yours to answer. And I want to empower each one of you to seek within yourself your own internal wisdom because you know your kids better than anyone. You know, each one is different and wants to know different things, and some don't want to know certain things. And you know your story, you know your ex, you know your reality, but your children have a completely different one, right? Just like your ex has a completely different reality as well. So the first question is, how do I own my own reality and validate my children's reality? So the first thing we need to do is separate their experience that they have with their father, with their parents, with our spouse, and our children. They are 2 completely separate experiences. And as I talked about in the last few episodes, they are completely different attachment injuries as well. Whatever injuries your children are experiencing through this is because of their attachment with primary caregivers, mom and dad. Your lived experience is going to be totally different than their story and their lived experience. So, first thought that I want to offer you here is to not make your story theirs and their story yours. And can we all invite curiosity and compassion into this conversation? When we start talking about our babies, it can bring out all of those beautiful protective parts and all of those mama insecurity or guilt parts. And nothing in my message today is to elicit guilt or further shame. I know you all are trying your absolute best here. And the fact that you're even listening to this and wanting to know what to do says so much. But let's stay in that curiosity as I offer you these 4 things. And especially if you realize that these things that I offer, if you're going, oh my gosh, I've already done it wrong. Please, 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 let's get rid of the black and white type of thinking that your brain is automatically going to give you in those black, white, right, wrong, good, bad type of thoughts. Curiosity is just like, oh, interesting, or I'm noticing. Okay. Let me learn more. Let me be more curious about that idea. That's what I really want you to stick with today. So, dropping into that first pillar of awareness as you coach yourself, because we can't change any of this if we aren't aware of what isn't working for us anymore. And you don't know what might not be working until you know different. So, just gathering information today. So, kid's story, our story, let's separate the 2 and look at them as completely different stories, as completely different attachment injuries. One way that this can show up is when my kids came home from their fathers and they had an experience that shook them, confused them, or caused them pain, then I could make their story mine by trying to either compare the stories, like, yeah, he did that to me too, right? Or this can look like asking your kid questions, interrogating them, trying to find out more about their story for validation to your own. Anytime you feel like you're getting in the boat with your kids, right? Like, yeah, we're all in the same boat here and we're all being impacted here the same. So now let's just row ourselves the hell out of here. Anytime you kind of feel like we're in this together kind of a thing against him, that's going to be your little pink flag guy to kind of wave it around and go, hold on, I need to slow down. I need to separate their experience with their father versus my experience with past spouse, because you're not in the same boat as your kids. They have their own boat. And if you abandon yours to get into theirs to try and save them or validate yours, then they have no captain boat to follow. They have no lighthouse leading their way as they navigate their own story here, as they navigate their own experience. That's number one. Your story is not their story. Your experience is not their experience. Now, when you can practice separating these, you can better get into their story as a secure attachment parent. You will be available, responsive, and engaged with them in their experience. Let's start with kids who ask all the questions, right? I totally had a little journalist in my house. And it was sometimes very subtle in the question asking. It felt good. It felt validating. I'll be honest. Like a lot of ways, I wanted her to ask all the questions because I wanted her to know all the things because I wanted her to get mad too. I felt like I'm the crazy one. And there were because of so much of that post separation divorce abuse happening, I felt more crazy after I left. Things were absolutely escalating. The abuse was escalating. And so naturally, there was this part of me that felt like, okay, I want all the people to know the truth here, in large part because he was telling such complete opposite truth, total lies, looking like the quote, nice guy. So that that played into it. And just acknowledging that and recognizing that in yourself and then giving yourself a big hug and compassion, knowing that it's going to be really tempting to want to bring your children into your boat and get them to hear your story, hear your side. And yet it really isn't helpful. I learned that the questions that my questioned kids were asking were really not the questions that they wanted to know. They might be asking about whether or not dad was paying child support. And because he wasn't, I wanted to tell them, hell no. And that's why you have to work so much. And this is why you have to be frugal. This is why you can't have this or that or do that extracurricular activity. And this is why you have to work and so on and so forth. Because really, I wanted them to understand that I'm not being mean. I didn't choose this. I feel really, really bad that you can't have all the things that you want. So let me just tell you all the ways that he is not paying or showing up so that you can understand more, but that I can feel a little bit less guilt. That isn't truly helpful for them. What she was really wanting to know with that question, what was underneath all of that was, are we going to be okay? And that is a question I could answer. Yes, you are going to be okay. Which leads to number two. When your children ask you questions, ask them more questions before answering their questions. I told my therapist that, look, if my kids ask me something, I am not going to lie. We have all had enough lying in our lives from him. And remembering that there's often another deeper question underneath the original question can help avoid giving them more information than what they really want or are really ready for. Remember, your kids do not have a fully functioning prefrontal cortex. So, for example, if one kid is saying, no, I really want to know. No, I really want to know. I want to understand, mom. I really want to know this. This is where your own adult, secure attachment, parenting, knowing needs to come into play. You've got to be their prefrontal cortex right now. Even though, and this is why you've got to separate. Okay, it's going to feel really good to let them know. And oh, she's asking. She really wants to know. But let me slow this down. Let me separate my story from hers. Let me separate the validation that, oh gosh, would feel so amazing versus what she's really needing to feel. And what is the question that she's really needing? Remember, for kids, it is all about safety. Safety first. It goes to that first pillar, safety and stability. How can I reassure them in their own sense of safety in their worlds and create some emotional stability for them? Satisfy some emotional dysregulation that might be happening due to that confusion from the other parent. Now, the kids who don't ask questions, yet you see them struggling to figure it all out because they're often confused just as much as the ones who are asking the question. And maybe they yell things like, I don't know who to believe. And you want to yell, are you freaking kidding me? Like, who's the one that's sticking around, working, providing, and not? And this is not about you. This is not about you, mamas. They're trying to figure out their own story, their own truth, and it's imperative that we let them. For the most part, with these children, you're just going to be consistent, steady, stable, and secure so that they can recognize the difference in their own bodies when they are with you versus the other parent. If you are clear and consistent, it helps them to better identify between the confusion on the other side of the street. If you add to that confusion by adding your story or your interpretation of their experience, then you add to their confusion. I would tell my kids, look, I am here when you want to ask me something. And when they did, I would ask more questions. In fact, recently my youngest and I were talking at dinner and he was processing some of his own awarenesses around his relationship with his dad right now. And he asked me, okay, so mom, but do I know everything? Like, is there more that I don't know? And the answer straightforward is like, no, you don't know everything. And I'd be lying if there wasn't this part of me that was like, oh, finally I can tell him the truth. Like my truth, my story. But I said, well, what makes you feel like you don't know everything? Like, what is it that you're really meaning with that question? And then immediately he goes, actually, I know all I need to know. And then he shared his truth, his knowing, and what he believes he knows was all he needed to make his own assessment around the situation that he was trying to figure out with his other parent. Okay, number 3, there is a difference between validating unhealthy behavior and trashing the father. When your children are experiencing manipulative behaviors, gaslighting, and all other forms of abusive communication, you absolutely get to validate that. Just try to keep your story out of that validation and stay in their story around validating how they feel in it, not what you feel watching your children being manipulated. So, for example, when I saw the spiritual abuse, the manipulation happening between parent and child, I wanted to rage like, Mama Bear coming out. I will flip this car if you mess kind of energy. So, I want to validate that in you mamas when that happens. And this is not helpful for your kiddos. This does not empower them to trust their own sense of knowing, to trust their own bodies, and to figure out with their own attachment, with their own primary caregiver. When I wanted to respond in a way where it's like, let me validate how I was spiritually abused by validating your spiritual abuse, that kind of energy did not actually validate them. Because I was coming at this from the mom seeing kids experience something from their father, and that was not my experience, right? Their father was my spouse, and that is not the same. So it's, what did that feel like? What did you think about that? What do you want to do about that right now? And how can I support you? Anything you need from me besides just to listen? Of course, of course, of course. If there is abuse happening that can be recognized by the court of law, please consult your lawyer. It is sad, it is frustrating, infuriating that more coercion and emotional abuse is not recognized in the court of law. I get that. This is where consulting with your lawyer or a professional can help you differentiate, like, okay, is this something that I need to take it to the court? Do I need to get a restraining order here? And in fact, I have been working with a lot more clients in different states who are able to get restraining orders, and that coercion is being recognized a little bit more in certain states, but just not all. So yeah, really, really frustrating. But this is where we can involve some professionals to help if you feel like it's crossing over to that line. So you validate the behavior, separate from your own story, validate their story and their experience with it. And then this is where the episodes that I just did around boundaries are going to be really key. Because when you hold the boundaries in your own life around accepting this kind of behavior from your ex or other people, then you are leading by example, which speaks louder than words. Okay, one last thing that I will share today, and that is number 4, trust your mama hearts and your intuition. You are going to hear a lot of advice. A lot of people say a lot of things, the shoulds and shouldn'ts. And yes, I've just given you some additional thoughts to consider today. But most importantly, and what I hope that you walk away with more than anything today is that you are their mom. No one else is their mom. And you know them best. You love them best. You know each of them, each are different, and you know each of their unique characteristics and traits. You know what each of them needs, their attachments and their perspectives. So trust yourself that you will know what to say and how to say it and when. Because number 5, the power is in the repair. You don't need to worry about getting it all wrong or trying so hard to get it right, because you can always repair into right. I have said a lot of I'm sorries and know that I will say more. It's kept the trust with me and my kids going because I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to have all of the answers for them or get them to see my truth, my story. But I am trying to be secure for them, safe for them, and I get to practice as long as I live. Okay, I hope that gives you some things to consider and to see what works for you, what's right for you right now and your children. And this might change next month. This might change in 6 months or a year. But you get to create this and answer this in a way that works for you. You get to be the chooser in how you show up for your kids and how you repair between you and your kids, because you absolutely can. Take care, everyone. Speaking of repair, ladies, how many of you are wondering what healthy looks like? How many of you are scared to death to get into another relationship? How many of you want to learn more about what corrective emotional experiences look like? Have you ever heard that term? It's what I want all of my ladies to do when they start dating. Not dating for marriage, not dating to even think about getting serious, but dating to start having some of those corrective emotional experiences when you've showed up in an unhealthy, insecure attachment style. This is how we figure out what healthy looks like, and it takes practice. And it can be really helpful to practice with other people. In my Dating from Within workshop, that is March 28th through 30th, I will show you what these corrective experiences can look like, March 28th through 30th. Find out more about the details with the link in the show notes. See you there.
I was born to fly and spread